every financial decision you make is typically a symptom, and that is a symptom of your mindset. If you're struggling to save, you're afraid to invest, or you're constantly stressed about money, it may not be a lack of knowledge, or it could be, but it's kind of like a hidden script. It's like a software running in your brain. This financial software doesn't dictate your bank account. It secretly dictates how you handle career choices, how you handle your relationship, other choices, and daily stress. Today, we're going to break down the invisible engine running your life. When you hear the word mindset, you probably think of some vague inspirational quote or toxic positivity. That is wrong. A financial mindset isn't motivation. It's the software already running in your brain. It is a filter that runs through in your career choices and every decision you make, typically, every day. And here's the truth. Nobody's neutral. Everybody has a mindset, a choice of beliefs that they run constantly, filtering through the decisions that they make. Now, sometimes the mindset's wrong, and bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, believing or justifying what they do is right. You didn't actually build this software. You kind of inherited it. You developed it through your parents, your childhood, your past, and through experiences. This script dictates how you handle market crashes, how you save. It controls your long-term wealth before you even log into your bank account. What happens when you try to run outdated software in the modern world? I mean, the days of saving your money, that's what I was told in the 70s, save. Well, in the 70s, lost so much value of the dollar. Saving it'd take me a day's pay just to go to McDonald's today, if not more. But I'm going to use the analogy of a car. So if you live in, say, New York City, parking's hard to come by, and everything's within walking distance. You walk to work, you go to the store, you just maybe take an Uber or taxi or whatever every once in a while. And it's generally cheaper, it's more convenient. You don't have to pay for a car, you don't have to pay for gas, you don't have to pay for insurance. And that can make a lot of sense, especially if you can't park your car. On the other hand, if you're in rural America where you might have 5, 10, 20, or even more miles to the store, and you have to go to work, and that's a 30, 40, 50-minute drive, you kind of need a car. So if you have the mindset that you don't need a car and you try to walk these places, your mindset more than likely is going to change. And so won't your expense account, of course. But the point I'm trying to drive home here is that the mindset of no car over here in New York City seems pretty good, but the thought of having no car in rural America where you can't easily access things is quite the burden. Now, sites like Investopedia, they all agree that your mindset affects how you run your life and dictates how you run things. Now, if your mindset is flawed and it doesn't adapt, it could be outdated, and the things that worked in the past are no longer going to work. For example, in the 70s, when I was a kid, my savings account paid 6%. That's not the case. I don't remember what the inflation was. I was a kid, but however, I do know that 6% is a lot better than the less than 1% you get today. So if your situation changes and your mindset does not, it can really have an effect on the outcomes. Now, I would recommend that you examine your mindset with facts. For example, if you say, I'm good with money, but your bank account says 0, you might be misleading yourself. I would recommend that you ground your self-assessment into objective metrics. Debt ratio, hours wasted, fitness goals, savings goals. There are certain mindsets that are like totally opposite. One is a victim mindset, and I run into this a lot. Things are so tough, I just give up. It doesn't work out for me. The list goes on. And then there's a victor mindset. Here's the deal. somebody making minimum wage, let's say the dishwasher at Red Lobster, uh, he probably makes better minimum wage, but let's just say he does make minimum wage. He worked there for 50 years. If he took 10% of his money and dollar cost average into the S&P 500, just 10% on minimum wage, he'd have over $1 million and probably do it before 60. But the difference is that the mindset is different. It's like, I can do this. I'm going to do this little by little by little, and then investing compounded his money. And while the person that's just like, I can't do this, it's all stacked up against me. Do you want to go out for pizza? So they're just gonna spend their money. Okay, and the mindset is kind of like, you only live once. So there's quite the difference, the victim and victor mentality. And people like to play the victim. And they like the pity, but unfortunately, the pity and attention that you gain from being the victim is not going to do you any good. But the victor the character is stronger. They accept the reality, and they do something about it. No matter how small, they do that. And this applies across many aspects of life. If you want to get in shape, you got to eat the bitter pill. You've got to do the exercises. If you want to save money and invest, you've got to eat the bitter pill. If you're not used to doing without a few things, especially the things you don't need, it's tough. It's tough. I have a friend of mine that told me that if she couldn't go out to eat, it was torture. And to the best of my knowledge, she has zero saved. And her situation is pretty good. One of the ways we can accomplish a change in the mindset is to set goals. Your goals are the destinations for your mindset. Without a clear written goal, you don't know what you're working towards. So, and goals can change. They should actually be reasonable and obtainable, but they also should be a challenge. So, how, why, and when would you want to change your mindset? Why is, if you're running an outdated software and you're trying to do old ways saving your money, and a lot of this comes from the Great Depression and the historic market crash that caused it. And that bled over for decades, and a lot of people are still in that mindset of not investing. However, the proof of the pudding is that right after crash was a darn good time to invest. And a lot of people did invest. A lot of people made money after the 1929 crash. Well, when do you change your mindset? And it's the moment that your mindset no longer really serves you. It stops matching your expectations, or your ability has changed and has grown. So maybe you were saving 10% of your money, but you've got adjusted to doing without. And then, maybe every 6 months or a year, you're at 1%. So instead of 10%, 11%. Of course, 1% increase is really not going to be as noticeable. And you can work your way up all the way up to 20%. If you start out right away with that, it may be more of a challenge to do that. So how do you change your mindset? By deliberately forcing new habits and consume high value information. Now, when I say high value information, you got to research your research, man. I mean, not everybody on YouTube is correct. Not every influencer is going to tell you what's going to work for you. So some things work for some things will work for others, and some things will work for everybody. And changing, you may need to change your physical environment. The question is that what are you willing to sacrifice? And I say sacrifice, but the truth of the matter is, I mean, we're not extreme minimalists, but we don't spend money just like we don't spend money like the average Americans. It doesn't matter. After a while, I just quit desiring the things. I still have desires. I do spend money. I use delayed gratifications, and I've waited years for like a camera. And the good thing about that is the longer I waited for a digital camera, especially when they're new, the better. and the cheaper that they got. So that was kind of an added benefit. But the thing is that my mindset changed and I no longer craved these things. So now let's talk about trust. And I'm not talking about trust in other people. Yeah, yes, no. So now let's talk about trust. Can you trust yourself? Can you trust yourself to make these changes? I mean, you can get accountability, but it may not be necessary if your mindset is correct. And can others trust you? If you can't trust yourself to do what you need to do, there's a high chance other people can't trust you either. But you have to trust yourself, do the research, and stick to your plan and trust that it'll work. Are there going to be failures? Absolutely. They're going to be victories? Absolutely. Now let's talk about accountability. You have to be accountable to yourself for sure. One real life example for me, I used to go to Central America in the winter. I worked a seasonal job, got laid off in the wintertime. Wasn't charged rent here, living a lot cheaper there, and I missed it. I missed the chance to save some money by going by like $100, and it didn't take me long to cut out the energy drinks. I think they're $2.50 a day. So that's $75 a month. In 10 months, that I work, that's, $750, which at the time was more than enough to buy a ticket. And then, save some. I was a waiter, so if I just saved my change, which actually adds up pretty quick as a waiter, I still have a bunch, just because I'm saving it, and then I started saving money. But the thing is that once I started holding myself accountable. Now, this was a small thing compared to where I'm at now, but it was the start. I was building these habits, right? As I grew, and I grew slowly, and there's nothing wrong with growing slowly, at least you're growing. So as I grew and started being more accountable to myself, started saving more money. You have to be accountable. Don't outsource the blame, If you have $0 in your account, it's your fault. Especially if you're drinking $75 worth of energy drinks a month, And if that's all you got, $75 a month, hey, that's a start. And it's also building a habit. So once you get rid of the energy drinks, for example, and you stop missing them, then you might get rid of that candy bar or that bear claw, or the whole list. I mean, if you want to know more, you can see some of my prior videos about frugality, and you can go to any extreme that you want. I don't recommend that you go so frugal that it's going to affect your health, and I don't recommend that you go so frugal that you're eating bad food. People are eating bad food anyway, and all I can say is please stop. Your health is a really good asset that you have that many people take for granted, and I've done it myself. All right. I got hot yesterday, had to shut it down. I don't have air conditioner on in my house. I do have it in my room, but my wife was sleeping, so I didn't want to go there and disturb her. Anyway, back to the mindset. There's always a trade-off. You've got to forego short-term pleasures for long-term leverage. You got to install this premium mindset, and you cannot keep cheap habits. And this is a really important part of life. It affects everything. It affects how you save. It affects your relationships. It affects your outlook, just the way you look at things. So it is really important, and you got to remember you're not always right, and you always have to adapt and change. Just make sure you change for the better. Thank you.